9660. The big debate, delay or defund Obamacare, sort of got the Republican Party divided here, and it's actually creating a lot of strange bedfellows. I'm bringing in right now Jennifer Stefano for Americans for Prosperity. Jennifer, you became a Tea Party star overnight. You've been at the forefront of all the really important issues, and yet I found it pretty interesting because you don't like the idea of going the defunding route, do you?
Well, no, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to go after Obamacare. And I think look, I have to take the fight to the street, and that's where I'm at. I organize activists, and I go where the fight is. And if I thought we could win going through Congress, that's where I would be. Unfortunately, Barack Obama knows, and his allies know, they're very shrewd at this. They're out knocking door to door, talking about enrolling people on Obamacare and really playing up the benefits in a door-to-door fight. Now, meanwhile, we're trying to storm a hill that nobody's standing on. I think we have to do and this is my sort of comparative advantage, going door to door with our activists, which is what we're doing, and talking about how this law affects our lives as a wife, as a mother, as a worker, and what it really means for the future. And that is where we're winning. We're winning not just conservatives or not just Tea Partiers. If you look at polling, we're winning moderate Democrats and others. And the key is to win.
Right, but here's the thing, Jennifer. This law has never polled well. I mean, people don't like it. And contrary to what Nancy Pelosi promised us, the more we know about it, the more we dislike it. This week alone, UPS kicking spouses off the programs, University of Virginia, I'm hearing AT&T could be next. I mean, unmitigated disaster. So it seems like the public gets it, but how do you translate that into some sort of action down in D.C.? I mean, meaningful action.
Well, I think what you're going to see happen is like happened before the 2010 elections, when the Tea Party actually controlled the messaging and was really at the forefront of it. It was women and men like me who were ordinary Americans, and really we took the fight to the street. And what I mean by that is talking about how these issues affect our lives. And when people start to there's two things that have to happen. Number one, people have to realize this is not good for me. It's never going to be good for me. While there might be one or two things that are positive about Obamacare, that's about 3 pages of a 2,700 plus page bill.
Right.
And I've got to get rid of this before it destroys my life. And then to make the connection that who is holding the offices there are in charge of whether or not this is going to change. And when that connection is made, that the negative impact on individual lives is directly tied to that man or woman sitting in office representing you, and that nothing can change with the way the Congress and the White House is structured now, that is when you start to see momentum. And that is the work I do, to make that connection.
So are you saying that you would change the structure of Congress, or the idea would be to change the weighting in Congress? In other words, to get more Republicans in?
Well, we don't get involved in elections, but I would argue that you want to make sure that when you go to your elected official, number one, that they'll come out and talk to you. And we've had enormous amount of trouble with the Democrats holding town halls or even taking meetings with our activists, and then to see where they're at on Obamacare. If these people are telling you it's good and there's benefits and you don't understand, guess what? The American people understand. And so you really have to address that and decide what that means for you and your congressman and all of your futures.
What do you make, though, of snatching victory from the jaws of defeat or something? In other words, it feels like that this is an issue that should be a slam dunk for Republicans and Democrats who feel it's just a poorly put together bill, that it would be much better to have a more thoughtful process of trying to fix the problems with our healthcare system. But what do you feel about the infighting? In other words, there seems to be a Rand Paul constituency, a Chris Christie kind of constituency. I interviewed Jim DeMint recently, and pretty harsh words, or at least it felt like there would be pressure on any Republican who wasn't willing to go to defund route. So now you've got defund versus delay, and the infighting may squander an amazing opportunity.
Right, like these guys need to knock it off. It's like the Sharks and the Jets, but without any good music or theme song. First of all, it's all these men, calm down, stop. The overarching goal is to win. Okay, and this is how I explain it. When leading up to the D-Day invasion, General Eisenhower, during World War II, General Eisenhower knew that in order to end the war in Europe, he had to take the continent. In order to take the continent, he had to go in and invade France, and he had to liberate Paris first. Now, there were two ways he thought about doing it. One was up from the south through Marseille, an amphibious landing that way, and the other way was from the north through Normandy Beach. Overall, it didn't matter because the end goal was liberating Paris, freeing France, and winning the war. He just had to decide which approach was the best. He chose Normandy. I believe the work I'm doing and other grassroots activists is storming Normandy Beach. And I think, while I'm not against defunding, while it's not a generally wrong principle, just let's focus on where the fight is at. Don't storm a hill and die on it to find out nobody's at the top. The fight is on the street level. And I wish that some of these guys in Washington could spend some time with me. And by the way, that noise you might hear in the background is my young babies yelling for me. And so I really live in this world. I live in a very purple state. This is what's happening. The fight is no longer in Washington. It's out here in the states, door to door, state house to state house, and that's how we win. We block Medicaid without the exchange.
I mean, I got to tell you, one of the reasons that you were propelled into the spotlight is because, you are a real person with real passion, and it came through tremendously. I mean, you're authentic, and we love that. But we're dealing with a place that tends to be inauthentic, and that's Washington, D.C. And, I think it's interesting because when I hear the president speak these days, what I hear is someone who's masterfully trying to separate the party himself. And I think he gave an interview this morning where he talked about some Republicans actually liking his ideas but being too afraid to articulate it because they're afraid Rush Limbaugh would say something mean about them on the radio. And I don't know if it's working or not, but he certainly is trying to take advantage of this divide that you're talking about. Some wanting to invade from the south, some wanting to invade from the north. You split them, you divide them, and you conquer them. And I just give you credit for going out there because you're fighting an uphill battle, not just with the fact that so many Americans are uninformed, but the fact that the people that seem to be your natural constituents on this, at least in the lawmakers, can't get their act together.
Right, and I love these guys, and they're with me, most of the time, and so this is a criticism that's basically saying, look, I appreciate that our elected officials, some of them are very smart, but you've got to understand where this fight has moved and what it's going to take to win. And I think, rattling the saber is not as effective as using the saber to go out and slay the beast. And Barack Obama is a masterful genius, and gosh, it pains me to say that about him, but he is in fact a masterful genius at looking at even the slightest divide, getting in there and making Republicans who oppose his law look bad. And worse than that, he's changing the conversation. When we are winning right now, moderate Democrats, I have conversations. They're coming to my meetings. I'm able to work with them. When they start to hear that when the decision becomes about not whether Obamacare is good for my life, but the decision becomes should we or not shut down the government, we're losing.
Right.
You're forcing people like me to lose. And they, I get the high level policy wonky issue that, that's not the right narrative. And, that's not it's the Democrats. Guess what, guys? You're not going to change the mainstream media. Republicans cannot and will not drive this narrative. Right. They will not win on it. Let's use the saber not to rattle, but to win. That's
right. And I want to let the audience know, you're referring to this new battleground or would-be battleground, the continuing resolution, which more or less says, we'll fund the government, the operations of the government. And a lot of Republicans are saying that's where we'll make our battle. That's where we'll go, and we'll either defund Obamacare, we'll cull that part out of the budget, or we'll shut the whole thing down. And you're saying if they make that the battleground, that's going to be their Waterloo.
I just don't think it's the right way to go. In principle, again, sure, defund is a very valid option. If you had the right votes and you had a different Senate, it could get done. But the fact is you do not. You do not have that in Congress. And what you're doing is making the conversation not about how it impacts your life. You're making people talk about whether a government shutdown is good. So you're absolutely right. Let's talk about how Obamacare impacts people's lives.
I got to tell you, Jennifer, and it seems to me like, and I want you to tell me, when you talk to people, who are politically agnostic, some are Democrats, some are Republicans, some are just concerned Americans, but it seems to me what should be resonating is when they pick up the newspaper and see that UPS has kicked off all the spouses. That should be resonating. The idea that they keep changing the rules mid-flight, that businesses are saying this is hurting us, that we've become a part-time job nation. It seems like a no-brainer. I mean, you're being armed to the teeth with the right kind of things to take to the American public, and it seems like all that stuff should be resonating for you.
Yeah, and it is resonating. And one of the messages that I constantly deliver, particularly to women, I've done a lot of focus groups on this, and I'm talking to a lot of women who are politically agnostic, as you say, and I just say to them, this is what's going to happen to you. I think the UPS thing is a great example. So what if this is me and my spouse loses, I'm no longer allowed to be on my spouse's health insurance, and my children no longer have health insurance? Then what do we do? Then where does the money come from? And talking woman to woman, or even as a worker, right? I'm a working mother. Talking as a worker, what happens if your insurance drops? What happens to your family? And that's not even the worst of it, because even if you get insurance, the government interference, and I think especially for women, there's a situation coming up again where the government is questioning the recommendation for women to have mammograms at 40. Well, this is a very big debate, and the government has before wanted to push it back to 50, and they're doing this again. This is going to directly impact women's lives and their children's lives. That is the conversation where we are winning the day, when we show the corporations and Congress are exempt from this disastrous law. Why not exempt me too, right? That's what I'm telling women to say.
I agree with you. I mean, it's amazing that we've had two major changes in it. It has nothing to do. Everyone listening to the show and watching you, they're going to have to pay. The individual still will have to pay that penalty, and you're not going to keep the doctor that you were promised. You're going to pay a penalty. You're going to be dumped onto a whole different system here. I want to change course for a moment though. And because earlier you talked about the midterm elections, right? And in 2010, which was amazing. I mean, the power of the Tea Party was phenomenal. The mainstream media had to go, and they had to do a smear campaign. They had to do anything they could. First the Tea Party was rich. Then it was racist, and then it was, cuckoo. I mean, they tried every single angle that they could but I feel like the Tea Party. And I've been to a lot of Tea Party events, and I've spoken at them, and I have a lot of friends involved in the Tea Party. I personally feel like they made a mistake, though, when they got off the grass and started running campaigns or running for office themselves. What do you feel about that? All right, looks like we're stalled here. Jennifer Stefano on Skype, and occasionally, guys, we know how Skype works. That stuff happens. Hey, listen, yesterday, the second largest exchange in the entire world crashed for 3 hours. Okay, it just went down for 3 hours. So we'll give Skype a break on this one. Maybe we can get Jennifer back. She, by the way, is absolutely